All right. I think it's a good time to get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar where we introduce the different PhD programs that we're running at the Imperial Bezos Centre for Sustainable Protein and at its partner universities. And I'm here with my colleagues, Julia and Olivia. I'm Sonia. I'm an associate professor at Imperial College. And what we have for you today is two different tracks that we're going to walk you through because they're similar but yet different. So we want you to understand the differences. Track one is the normal Imperial Bezos Centre Sustainable Protein track, and Julia will walk you through this. And the second one is a track that is called Scale Industrial Biotechnology, or Scale IB in short, which is a scheme that is co-funded by UK Research and Innovation. And last but not least, Olivia, who's a PhD student of the current cohort, will give you some insights from the inside of the Bezos Center. So this will be recorded. So you can always come back to it and watch in more detail if something is not clear. We're going to walk you through the different programs first, and then all the way in the end, we have time for questions. And yeah, with no further ado, I give the floor to my colleague Julia, who will start with the PhD track number 1.
Thank you, Sonia. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and kind of being so interested in the PhD program. I'm Julia. I work at the Bezos Centre. I'm one of the kind of 5 core members management team of the center, so I work full-time for it, and I'm responsible for commercialization and venture building, so essentially making sure that all of the research that we do doesn't just end up in academic papers, which they will, but that it's kind of commercialized and translated to industry, which actually fits in really nicely with the PhD program, the Imperial Bezos Centre kind of sustainable protein track that I'm gonna walk you through. Sonia, please, next slide. So for those kind of familiar with the Bezos Centre for Sustainable Protein, what we are, for those of you that are not familiar with the Bezos Centre for Sustainable Protein, I'm going to briefly kind of walk you through who we are, what we do, our key areas, and everything. So essentially, we are supported by the Bezos Earth Fund, and we're supported by the UKRI funded Microbial Food Hub. And our aim is to drive the sustainable protein revolution and advance microbial food through innovation, through cutting edge science, fermentation technologies, and also collaboration. So the way that we work is by kind of uniting and working together in between academia and industry. And our big kind of overarching goal is to develop nutritious, affordable, scalable protein solutions that can strengthen the global food system resilience. So as I mentioned, through translation and commercialization, we want to address these kind of key global challenges in sustainability, in food security, and in health, and ultimately to transform these food systems. We have over 160 researchers, over 40 research groups, a stakeholder ecosystem of over 300 partners, over 90 projects, and to date over 60 million in funding. So we are very kind of big and ambitious center, but we actually aim to keep on growing. I guess specifically for the PhD program, we want to design research with industry and for industry, kind of ensuring that science is aligned with real world challenges so that it's ultimately kind of more impactful. Next slide, please. So we're based at Imperial. We operate in something that we call the hub and spokes model. So we are based at Imperial, but actually we have different partner universities across the UK, but also across Europe, in the US as well, and in Singapore through NUS. The reason why we partner is because we think that together we're so much stronger, and we can leverage kind of each other's benefits and each other's kind of facilities, range of expertise, and so many different things. So actually, the Bezos Centre is not just Imperial; it's kind of a collection of other universities who we partner with and who we work with, kind of on a day-to-day basis. And actually, the PhD cohort now, Olivia will be able to talk more later, but it's not just made up of Imperial PhD PhD students. It's made up of students who come from all of these different universities, which we think kind of strengthens the whole thing much more. Next slide, please. And actually, when it comes to partnership, we don't just partner with other universities and with other kind of research institutions. We want to go further and we want to partner, and we've already partnered with startups, SMEs, VCs as well, so specialist food VCs, corporates. So we're kind of working with a lot of corporates already, but then also things like gastronomy institutions, and kind of some other network and event partners. So our ecosystem is kind of very large, and it doesn't just kind of include research institutions. It's so much broader, just to ensure that we can achieve that larger impact that I talked about at the beginning. Next slide, please. So briefly starting to talk about the PhD program. So as I mentioned, we think that there are kind of global food system challenges in terms of sustainability, in terms of food security, and in terms of health and nutrition. And actually, all of these are kind of coming because of different kind of environmental, socioeconomic, and nutritional pressures. So our big objective as a center is to kind of solve and kind of reimagine food systems through these different lenses. Next slide, please. And our PhD program, what it does is it aims to kind of solve these key challenges within food systems through partnership with industries. So through partnerships with different corporates who have defined key challenges, so key R&D challenges that have a further impact in the lenses of sustainability, food security, or health and nutrition. So actually following the launch of the 2025 cohort, we're actually expanding these partnerships, these corporate partnerships through the 2026 program, and are inviting engagement across the research strengths that we have. So when it comes to research areas and capabilities, we have different. So we have what we call the facilities, which you can see on top of the slide, and then we have applications. So applications, so we have different areas. So we have cultivated meat, we have plant and algae, and then we have fermentation that includes traditional biomass and precision fermentation. But then we think that for each of these kind of three application areas, they can benefit from access to different facilities, which are cell engineering, food technology, nutrition, scale-up, AI, and cell bank. So essentially, as you can see, kind of it's very broad. Our scope is still very, very broad, just to make sure that we can address these core challenges as efficiently as we can. Next slide, please. So I will talk a little bit more about how we plan to allocate projects and how the process will be. But actually, depending on the project allocated and what you kind of end up choosing, and also depending on supervisory and alignment and industry alignment, you may pursue different areas of research. So the first one is in engineering, biology, and fermentation. The second one is more nutrition, product development, or consumer studies. We actually have one student right now in Imperial Business School who's working on understanding the consumer and understanding kind of retailers as well, and kind of making sure that marketing claims in new products are aligned with what retailers and consumers want. So kind of it's really broad, and the spectrum is really, really broad, and you can see it through things like this. Cultivated meat, as I mentioned before, is a big area. Plant-based protein innovation as well. We have some component of bioprocessing, scale-up, and automation, although if you're interested in scale-up, Sonia will talk about track B, which is kind of fully focused on scale-up. And then also things like computational AI-driven approaches for food and bioprocess design. We also have a student who's working right now, a PhD student who started in October, who's working on LCAs. So as you can see, the spectrum is still very broad. And the way that we will work is that you will be matched to projects at a later stage, kind of based on what projects are available, and what are your interests. If you have a kind of preferred supervisor, you can also kind of mention that in your application. Next slide, please. So who are we looking for? So I think the key thing here is that we want to have applications from really kind of motivated individuals, so that have a very high intellectual curiosity towards the field and are really passionate about the field, and want to have a big impact in the field as well. When it comes to kind of more tangible things, we expect a degree. Master's is preferred. And in terms of the areas, because the areas of projects are so kind of extends and kind of have such a broad impact, have such a broad scope, you can kind of, depending on what you choose, you probably will be expected to have degrees in biological sciences, bioengineering, food science, chemical engineering, computational biology, social sciences as well. As I mentioned, the genuine passion, experience or a strong interest in lab computational or bioprocess research as well, and excellent kind of analytical problem solving, communication skills, and the ability to work independently and thrive in interdisciplinary teams. So again, this is very relevant because the challenges that we're trying to solve are kind of interdisciplinary in itself. So you will have and you will be expected to work with other disciplines to kind of solve these big challenges. Next slide, please. When it comes to the application process, there's kind of two big stages. The first one is this initial application that you probably will have seen through our LinkedIn post, and kind of the landing page is this one that you can see here. And it's a standard application. And if you've navigated through it, you've probably seen that it's kind of quite straightforward. It has kind of three big sections. So the first one is kind of personal details and home fee status that I will talk about later, but that's the first part. And then the second and the third are kind of the big important part. So motivation statement. So I think this is really relevant because here you should let us know what are the key areas that interest you. So interest in sustainable food innovation research. What specific topics are you the most passionate about? Is it cultivated meat? Is it kind of more engineering biology as a whole? Like, do you have a specific challenge that you'd like to solve? Do you have a broader scope? Are you just interested in the field and you have a very kind of strong technical background and you're willing to apply it in different things? Tell us about your story and make sure that you kind of tie it back to your academic, your professional, your personal background, and tell us how all of those things and all of those all of that background has actually prepared you for this PhD. And then we want to ensure impact for the center, but we want to ensure that this PhD is impactful for you and your career. So tell us, how are you going to use this PhD in the future? What do you plan to do with this PhD? What are your long-term goals? As we mentioned, and specifically for the Bezos Centre track, we're very focused on impact, and impact is primarily done through our PhD students. So so tell us, what are you going to do with your PhD? And then the second part is kind of more the standard CV. So let us know about your education. Tell us different analytical tools. So if you're really interested in a specific, as an example, I don't know, like synthetic biology project for precision fermentation, you're one of those that has a really clear idea of what you want to do, then tell us, like, what analytical skills, what technical skills do you have that are going to make you thrive in that? If you're interested in AI, like, tell us, like, can you code? What programs? Tell us, and just make sure that you're kind of as explicit as you possibly can, with kind of your skills, but also let us know if your awards, publications, extracurricular activities are super important as well. So let us know as well what do you like to do in your free time that it's kind of aligned to sustainable food innovation, and why are you passionate about this field? So this is kind of stage one. And then, Sonia, next slide, please. And then we would go into stage two. So the way that it would happen is the deadline for stage one is in January the 18th, so actually a month from now. And then once we've received all of those applications, at the same time, we're going to be kind of creating the projects with industry. So we're going to shortlist projects, and we're going to have a list of projects. And in the next stage, what we will do, once we shortlist your applications from stage one, we will kind of select candidates to go to the next phase. And then we will tell you, if you've been shortlisted, we will tell you these are the 8 projects that have been shortlisted, and the 8 projects that are available. And you will kind of need to apply to those projects that are of interest to you. So you will kind of need to say again, of course, like all of the information that you've already submitted will be shared with those projects that you applied to, but you will it will give you an opportunity to say again in a more kind of specific project basis, what are those projects that you feel you can contribute to the most and which ones you are kind of more interested in. And then finally, what we will do is kind of the individual industry supervisors for each project will kind of carry out the interviews for each of the different projects. Next slide, please. So I think you're able to see the timeline here a bit in more detail. So we've been gathering kind of industry outreach through our partnerships, and we initially kind of have an idea of the areas. But as I'm saying, like we will need to refine these a bit further. We opened up applications in December. The deadline for student applications for this first phase is on the 18th of January. And then we will let you know around February if you've been shortlisted for stage 2. And then in stage 2, which will open late February through March, we will kind of do this second round of applications, and we will do this student topic matching, just so you can apply to the topics that are of most interest to you. And then finally in April, we will offer the final offers, and then the PhD projects at Imperial will start in October 2026. And then finally, these are kind of some admin details. So when it comes to funding, we've received a lot of questions about this. So this program is fully funded for UK home students. If you're not a UK home student, you will need to cover the difference. So you will need to pay for that yourself, or you will need to find external fundings through other grants or through foundations and so on, but you will need to make up the difference in fees if you're an overseas applicant. Location, it's in the Bezos Centre, so it's at Imperial in our White City campus, which is really cool. We've just moved to our new offices, and they're very nice. And you will share the offices with the Bezos Centre kind of core team, and also with Sonia and the rest of the PIs. And the duration of the PhD is of 4 years. And if you have any questions, please email me. My email is here. So please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. But if you have kind of more specific, but if you have kind of more specific questions, you can kind of drop them down in the chat, and we will answer them later. And I'll hand over to Sonia now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julia. So I'm just going to move right into the track 2, which you're going to see is structured in a very similar way, but topic-wise, it might be slightly different. So this track 2 is called Scale Industrial Biotechnology, or in short, Scale IB, and it is actually co-funded by the UK Research and Innovation Council. But the Bezos Centre is also funding part of it. So this is why we call it kind of the second track of the Imperial Bezos Centre's PhD programs. So just to make you aware, so Scale IB is one of the recently awarded UKRI BBSRC Industrial Doctoral Landscape Awards. So this is a 40 million investment from the UK Research and Innovation Agency to basically train students across different disciplines that are relevant for industrial growth. And this is not only biotechnology and food. This is also anything in bioscience, artificial intelligence, data science, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different universities that have received funding. So just for the context. So our specific program, Scale IB, now stands for the Sustainable Center for AI Leveraged Efficiency in Industrial Biotechnology, very long title. It's not important that you remember that. What is important is that we have a team that includes the Imperial Bezos Centre. So this is, we're leading this program here, but we have very dedicated industry partners. One is BASF, which is a German-based but UK operating chemical company that recently also transitioned into biomanufacturing for sustainability reasons. Bühler, which is kind of like a Swiss biomanufacturing equipment company. And then our partners, Aberystwyth and UCL. So Aberystwyth and UCL are also spokes to the Bezos Centre. So it's basically just a smaller team within the bigger Imperial Bezos Centre ecosystem that is now running this dedicated program. So we have about 28 studentships that we intake over 3 years, and these are in addition to the Bezos Centre one that Julia just talked about in track 1. So we have intakes in October 2026, October 2027, and October 2028. So this is good to maybe keep in mind, even if you're not only started your master's, for example, now. So maybe just a bit of the background. So what we're trying to achieve in this specific track is to really think how we can produce goods in a very sustainable way. And we go even a bit broader than only foods. We actually think of anything that you use nowadays and how this is usually produced in modern societies by using petrochemicals. So most of the things we're using, fuels, materials, foods, anything we're using these days in our daily lives comes from the chemical industry. And this is not necessarily sustainable because we have only limited resources of oils available. So there has this whole field now in engineering biology which tries to kind of like, turn waste products into value using engineered microorganisms or even eukaryotic cells, mammalian cells, and we call those cell factories. So they're basically turning any waste stream, and that could be, any agricultural waste, organic waste, banana peel that you leave over after breakfast, or even gaseous waste like carbon dioxide, using these side streams and kind of like using cellular metabolism, engineered cellular metabolism, and turning that into value-added products. The big question here is, we move forward. Yeah. The big question here is actually how we do that at scale. Because I think on a laboratory scale, which usually happens at like 1 to 10 liters, we became relatively good at ideating these processes and implementing them. So I think the field has already been around for about like 10, 20 years. So we're really good at that, I would say. But what's lacking is really translating the success that happens in our academic labs to industry scale so that we can really, make these products in amounts that society can actually use them and that we can then replace production streams that come out of the petrochemical industry. So how do we go from 10 liters to 1,000 liters? And that might seem, simple, but actually there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So these cell factories don't scale. Often we don't fully understand what's going wrong, and there's a lot we need to learn. And so this is why we thought it's a perfect topic where academia and industry can actually join forces, because we need new technologies to better understand and mitigate these scaling challenges we're meeting. But we also actually need students who have the skills to operate the big fermenters, to think about in, big terms, and who have kind of like the sector and systems understanding to really kind of like start the cell factory and engineering with scaling in mind and then really taking it to the next level. In academia, we can, of course, do the cutting edge high-risk science to address some of these, still very open questions. And we can deliver technological innovations, and industry can actually deliver the large-scale equipment because we don't have access to that here in our academic environment. They have the knowledge how to operate it. They know the real-world challenges, and they also have the sector know-how. So this is where this kind of like project, this award, this PhD training comes in. And we really want to think about, this scaling as a process that goes from end to end. So really from feedstock, from the waste feedstock to, the real product. And this involves, feedstock sourcing. So thinking about, where's the feedstock coming from? How do we need to prepare the feedstock so that the cell factories can actually metabolize it? How do we engineer the cell factories, and what cell factory are we actually using? And then, how do we eventually kind of like scale it up to large scales? And then how do we downstream process these different molecules we're producing that they eventually become the product we want it to be? And, only if we achieve this whole end-to-end process at scale, will we be able to kind of reduce the cost to a level that we can actually compete with the petrochemical industry, that we can then eventually really reduce the environmental impact that our current production manufacturing chains are causing, And also in this program, of course, increase the talent pool of students that are able to think that way. So if you're interested in kind of like this systems thinking, this PhD program, this track could be specifically for you. So what you will do and what you will learn. So first of all, I have already a QR code here to the application form. So, feel free to scan it and already look at the application form. I will have that here on the slides all the time. So what you will do, you will be placed into an individual research project. So this is the core of the learning, and you will work on one of the different topics, because often for your research, it will be too difficult to address all the different topics, because each of them I just talked about has specific challenges. But as a cohort, you will likely be able to address this kind of end-to-end process. And this is important that you will work on a project related to one of these, what we call innovation themes, because during the application process, you will need to choose which ones you want to apply for. The first one is yield, so more like thinking about, the cell engineering. So how can we increase yield such that cell factories produce more than they currently do? How can we scale up, going from small scale reactors to big fermenters? How can we kind of integrate processes really from feedstock to large-scale fermenters? How can we implement downstream processing? And how can we use data, automation, and AI to help us kind of like improve these processes? So these are the 5 innovation schemes. You will also have an at least 3 months industry placement. So similar to the track 1 PhD program, all the projects we're offering will be co-created with industry, and your industry partner will host you for at least 3 months, or maybe even longer. That depends a bit on like, how much time makes sense. And in addition to this, you will also get course-based skill training in terms of, bioreactors, bit of programming, soft skills, data analysis. So we're putting together a course-based program that you're going to run aside your individual research project. Similar to the research projects also of track 1, they will be co-created by your potential future supervisor and industry. So it's not an expectation that you co-create them. You will apply to existing ones. So we will also, within this program, train you to think about different careers in this scaling sector. So, that can not only be research and development, which is usually something we do in academia or early in industry. We also want to get you exposed to policy and regulation, because often these products that we biomanufacture have certain, regulatory hurdles, or maybe there's policy that needs to be changed to, subsidize these productions. So we want you to also think about these, societal interfaces with science. And we also want you to expose you to entrepreneurship, because there's, of course, a lot of opportunity to also maybe start your own company in that sector. And in addition, you're of course going to be part of like a vibrant community. Yeah, there will be a lot of opportunity to network, because I think for you to become really, future innovators, you need to know the right people and you need to know how to talk to. So we want you to get exposed to those. So we have, for example, industry days that you will help us co-organize, and we will have industry and academia seminars and so on and so forth. So that's what we offer to you. You will do your PhD at one of our, academic institutions, that is either at Imperial College or at University College London, so UCL, or at Aberystwyth University. So different to the Bezos track, this track is really, the students are located at different places. And you will, in the first cohort at least, work closely with our 2 main industry partners, BASF and Bühler, but we have more partners that likely in future cohorts come in to co-create projects. So the recruitment process is almost identical to track 1. So it is a 2-phase application process where you first apply for the program. And the purpose is to really, identify strong candidates. You can list your interest. You will also write a motivation statement and everything that Julia said before, how to write your motivation statement really applies also here. Make it very explicit. What are your skills? Why are you motivated for such a program? And submit your CV. You will also need to choose, and this is really just clicking in the form, you will need to choose your preferred university where you would like to be located. Because if you want to be located at Aberystwyth University, that of course matters because it's physically like, it's a very different location. And also already give us an indication what your preferred research scheme would be, because eventually we will be co-creating projects and we're in the process of doing this, but these projects are yet not ready. So the actually really defined projects that Julia also talked about, where we write down a title and a short summary. We're currently co-creating them with industry. They will be ready in about February, March, and then everyone who has, applied in the first phase will have the chance to choose a specific project they want to be considered for, and then we go through the kind of matching process and find the best candidates for the project. And the timeline that Julia outlined previously is also holds true for this PhD program. So who are we looking for? Well, most importantly, we really want to welcome applicants from a lot of different backgrounds, ethnically, socioeconomically, and so on and so forth, because I think really to invent the future, we need a lot of different perspectives. So we feel very passionate about that. And eventually, everyone who shares a passion for sustainable innovation and discovery can apply, as long as you have an eligible bachelor or master degree. And indicative relevant backgrounds include, similar to what Julia said earlier, it makes a lot of sense if you have a life sciences degree, for example, microbiology, molecular biology, engineering biology, cell biology, you name it. But you can also apply if you have an engineering degree, for example, from chemical engineering or biotechnology. That is very, very relevant, especially when you think about these fermenters and how they need to be maybe changed to meet the scale-up challenges. We also welcome students with a background in data science, physics, math, or even food sciences. So don't be discouraged to apply if your background maybe doesn't perfectly match, as long as you feel like you have something to contribute to this PhD programs, and you can convince us. We're very happy to have you on board and consider your application. Yeah, so I think this is what I wanted to say about the track 2. Again, questions can be asked later. And now I hand over to Olivia, who can give you a bit of insight into, what's going on in the center and how it feels like to be a PhD student here.
Amazing, thank you. Yes, okay, so hi everyone, my name is Olivia. I'm a new PhD student in the Bezos Centre. So I'm actually doing a 1+3 MRes plus PhD program that's with the Institute of Chemical Biology. And my project is focused on improving multiplex CRISPR gene editing tools to produce milk-relevant molecules. And my project actually has 4 supervisors on it. So one is from the Department of Bioengineering, one is chemical engineering, one specializes in automation, and then the 4th is an industry partner. So it's been really interesting so far working with everyone and just hearing their insights from such different backgrounds and specialties to develop the project and just hear their diverse perspectives. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I wanted to quickly talk about why I chose Imperial and the Bezos Centre. So I did my undergrad back at Tufts University in the States, and I worked on cell-cultivated meat. And not only did I find the science to be very fascinating, but I learned how important it was to me that my work had the potential to create a more sustainable and ethical food system. So I've known that I wanted to keep working on future foods for the rest of my career, and that a PhD would personally best prepare me to make the most impact. And I had been following the Bezos Center since it was first announced by the Bezos Earth Fund a few years ago, and I knew I wanted to be a part of such a unique and pioneering group of researchers within the sustainable protein field. And I think what makes the center so special is just how collaborative the environment is. So just looking at my project alone, I have supervisors from 3 different departments at Imperial and 1 from industry. So I love how cross-disciplinary everything is, which Julia was kind of touching on. because food systems really spanned across so many different fields and specialties. And then another thing I've really appreciated so far is how closely the center works with industry. So many of the different projects, including my own, have industry co-sponsors, and industry partners regularly attend events and different programs. So it's been a great opportunity so far to network and learn from people who are working on similar real-world challenges. And finally, I really like to work alongside people who are so genuinely excited about their work. And I could tell that the Bezos Center team just has such a lively and passionate community of researchers. And I knew that was the kind of environment I wanted to do my PhD in. Next slide, please. So yeah, I know I touched on the collaborative nature within Imperial, but as Julia mentioned, there are also 13 other universities who are highly involved in the center's activities. So having the opportunity to continue working with some of my fellow researchers from Tufts, where I did my undergraduate, as well as other students across the world who are working on food systems, was a really big calling point for me and something that I'm really trying to build now that I'm here at Imperial. Next slide. Yeah, so as Julia mentioned, one thing that we're trying to develop within the Bezos Center is a close-knit network of all of the affiliated PhD students across the 13 universities. So the goal of this initiative is to make sure that everyone really gains the most from doing their PhD with the center and feels prepared for whatever comes after in their careers. So things are still in the earlier stages of developing this initiative, but there are some key topics that we really are hoping to focus on, such as various skill training, learning how to navigate IP throughout your PhD, commercialization for those who might be interested in taking their work a step further, and of course, organizing social events so we can just meet one another and de-stress a bit from all the chaos of being a PhD student. And then one thing we really want to focus on with this network is that it's informed by the current cohort. So we're always open to suggestions for anything that might be helpful, and we want to do everything we can to make that happen. So we just really want to cater this community towards the current students. And then next slide, please. And yeah, the last thing I guess I wanted to touch on before we go into questions was just some advice. I think throughout the whole process, both when you're applying and once you're actually in a PhD program, I would say it's really important to be proactive. So far, I've seen that everyone in the center is just so kind and so willing to help. So if you have any questions or concerns when you're applying or during your actual project, they're such a great group of people to work with. And I can tell that they really just want to make sure we all make the most out of our time here. So yeah, that was everything for me, and happy to answer any questions.